I welcome all the eminent panelists of this very important session, especially keeping in mind the new normal. Know that school as an ecosystem is struggling to cope up with the new normal, uh, resulting in from this pandemic situation. And one of the biggest concern of parents, teachers, and students are is that when the schools are open, how to address the common concerns coming out of the pandemic, how to maintain safety and security standards, what can be the standard operating procedures, how to ensure the hygiene in the school premises. I think it's one of the very important sessions of this day where all the stakeholders like students, teachers, parents will be looking forward to hear from the leaders who will be part of this session. Before we introduce all the esteemed panelists of the session, the name of the session is New Normal SOPs for Education Institution, Safety, Security and Remote Learning. And we have got leaders from school ecosystem from various parts of the country. And as Sudhi was saying, it's the first day of Global Education and Scheme Conclave being hosted by Telangana Government Collegiate and Technical Education Department, organized by APEC Digital News Network. And let me also inform all of you, the supporting agencies who have supported this conference, presenting partner, Geetham University, co-presenting partner, College Dunia, technology partner, Dell Technologies, powered by partner, Harappa, principal banking partner, ICICI Bank, prime university partner, Amit University, university partners, Telangana University and Jawaharlal Nehru University of Hyderabad, academic partner Chitkara University, innovation partner Big Innovation India, Big Innovation Center India, career guidance partner Campus Crop, and associate partner Flipnerd. And as Sudhi was saying, 7 countries have joined this conference as country partner. British Deputy High Commissioner of Hyderabad has joined, Austrian government has joined, Israel government has joined, Innovation Norway has joined, Republic of Malawi have joined, Embassy of Afghanistan have joined, and Nafik Neso, the education body of Netherlands government, has also joined as country partners. And also, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, Uttarakhand State Government, Telangana State Council of Higher Education, TASK, IIM Sambalpur, IIT Delhi, IIT Kanpur, and VHub and APSCHE has also joined as supporting partners. With this, let me introduce all of you to a panel which is of very importance because when we are thinking of opening of schools, maybe 6 months down the line, 5 months down the line, how to open those schools, what are the concerns to be addressed by the parents, teachers, and student fraternity, how to maintain hygiene and how to maintain that physical distance is maintained in the school premises, how technology can be leveraged in that part. With this, let me introduce you to the moderator of the session, Dr. Chandrakant Pathak, Principal and CEO, HVB Global Academy. Welcome, Dr. Chandrakant. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, sir.
Let me introduce Dr. Alam Sriva Reddy, Chairperson, Hindu International School. Thanks for joining, Dr. Reddy. Let me also introduce Rashmi Singh, CEO, Poddar Braille International School. We welcome Ms. Singh. Let me also introduce you, Seema Handa, Managing Director and CEO, Ekalavya School. Thanks for joining us, Seema Handa.
Thank you.
I also welcome Sapnu George, Executive Director, Trivandrum International School.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Sapnu George. And also, let me introduce all of you to Ramani Varanasi, Principal, Akshara International School. Thanks for joining us, Ramani.
Sir. Thank you.
This, I'll hand over the session to Dr. Chandrakant Pathak. A very important session. I think it's one of the important sessions. The need of the hour to discuss new normal SOPs for education institutes, safety, security, and remote learning. Over to you, Dr. Chandrakant Pathak.
Thank you, Mr. Shobik Goswami once again. I welcome my all friends on the panel, and I'm sure it's going to be a very, very learning experience for all of us, and we will learn from each other. Good evening to each and every audience, panelists across the globe. As the topic is already introduced, new normal, SOPs for institutes, safety, security, and remote learning. The COVID-19 pandemic precipitated by the novel coronavirus has brought into sharp relief the urgent need to rethink the way educational institutions fulfill both their administrative and educational functions. On the administrative front, the challenges include providing safe and secure ways of facilitating face-to-face interactions between all personnel present at the campus, keeping in mind the mechanics of the spread of the disease. Given the logistical challenges posed by the large population of our country, it is likely to take a long time to fully neutralize the threat of the novel coronavirus, even after the vaccine is available. Yesterday, we all have heard that UK has already gone for Pfizer vaccine. But as an educational institutions, we likely need to find ways to observe social distancing norms in their everyday functioning. On the education front, the challenges are much more difficult, which includes making the off-campus remote learning effective and inclusive despite the disparity among students in terms of the access of technology, quality study materials, and supportive environment at home, which is very, very important. These disparities are bound to worsen the divide between the privileged and underprivileged sections of the country. This in turn is likely to lower the quality of workforce in the time to come, and thus contributing to the problem of unemployment and threatening social harmony. Keeping all these points in our mind, I would like to go to my first panelist, Mr. Mustaq Ali. And my question to you, sir, is remote learning has been key to continuing education despite countrywide lockdown to prevent the spread of coronavirus. However, remote learning requires students to access the internet. So what are some of the inherent privacy and security issues we should anticipate? Is Mr. Mustaq Ali there with us? All right. I move to my next panelist.
Yeah, Mr. Mustaq is not there.
All right, I move to my next panelist, Ms. Ramani Varanasi. Hello, madam. And my question to you is, given limited resources we have and the constraints in which we are operating, what steps might we take to address privacy and security concerns associated with a student accessing the internet? This brings even my first question and this question together to you.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, ma'am. So let me not take much time for introducing myself, as I have already been introduced. Am I audible, Ms. Pathak?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Right. Personally, I believe education industry, schools and colleges are the most lively places in the world. The reason being, we have children of all age groups, different attitudes, different smiles, different ages, and the place is all lively from morning to evening. And the COVID-19 has wiped out all this for this academic year. And yes, when we talk about the chances we had to really teach the children in a physical classroom, we had a lot of scope of teaching and learning for the students. In physical classrooms, teachers could really use teaching learning material. They could give projects. They could form children into groups, take the children to the labs. Teachers have many ways to convey the content they wanted to the children in the most interactive way. But now, COVID-19 has put out almost 1.6 million students in approximately 161 countries, as per what many research data says. The only option left for the schools is remote learning. I would like to give a small bifurcation of virtual learning and remote learning, right? But as of now, I'm talking about virtual teaching is what we are doing, everyone. Because we had to accelerate that process, we didn't have any other choice. But undoubtedly, the live classrooms are never a replacement for the physical classrooms, for sure. And now coming to what we really need for us to go and attend classes. When I say us, I mean the students. To attend the classes is an excellent internet base. Now let's see where India stands in this internet. A research says recently in Jan 2020 that India is the second largest internet user base with over approximately 550 million users, and it's likely to go up to 600 by 2021. So now this has increased the usage, and sure, online privacy will definitely be a major concern in this instance. There is no doubt about it. And there was also a research done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, which says Indian cybersecurity market is expected to grow from 1.97 million in 2019 to 3.5 million by 22, which again says we have to work a lot on the cyber attacks. And especially education industries, all the schools, they have wealth of information with them which has to be very well safeguarded. And the children who are logging into these devices to listen to these classes, I believe they might be using their parents' laptops or tabs or smartphones, or they might be owning one. There's a lot of need for them to safeguard their security and privacy. Again, going to the second part of the question that Ms. Pathak posed, privacy and security issues. So let me just define this security and privacy. Security issue occurs when someone actually tries to hack or have an access to the website. I would prefer talking more about the privacy issue here, which is nothing but involving the unwarranted access to the private information, which everyone is at a threat right now. And especially many faculty members have replaced already the physical classrooms, of course, with the online classrooms with no option left. So the first point that comes to the mind is cyberbullying. So the talk I would be going on today, I would be quickly going through what are the general problems that students come across and what we can do to minimize them and who should be responsible for all this. I'm just dividing it into 3 parts. Now, let me very quickly go through the problems because I don't like talking more about the problems rather than I prefer talking about the solution. Now, yes, we do have cyberbullying going on where it is nothing but emotional harassment. And then we have online sexual abuse and exploitation that goes on in the virtual classes. And we have also cyber radicalization, then online fraud attacks with our card information, with the personal information and things like that. And online enticement, which is again access to inappropriate content. All this is accessible for the children. So now what happens generally in the online classes? Children make fun of the others in the internet chat rooms. They harass other children through instant messaging sessions. And they start forwarding the pictures of the students in the groups, which might emotionally distress the students, which is generally happening in the online virtual classes right now. So what are the basic things we can really do to prevent the cyberbullying. As of now, that's in our reach. I'm talking about things that are really in our reach. First of all, let's educate the children. When we are accepting a request on a Facebook or any platform, let's try to check the authenticity before we accept the request. And let the children also remember that anything posted online stays there. It cannot be erased. It's saved somewhere. And let's be very careful when anyone posts the information, personal information, date of birth, signatures, card information, and all these things. Children have to be told, they have to be very careful. And I mean, like, children fancy downloading every game that comes on the internet, every software that they find new and attractive. We have to definitely tell the children to uninstall or not install all these unwanted software, apps and games, and let them just confine to what they actually really need. And at times what happens in this part of the cyberbullying, I would say, children come across different posts about themselves. And when they read that, they get upset. And that youth and people of that age, they immediately want to retaliate with a strong message. And I think that's a very wrong step that the children would be taking at that point of time. I mean, like, it would be drawing the attention of the person who is dropping wrong messages rather than stopping them. I would say in such cases, it's advisable for them to approach the parents and tell them this is what has been happening, so that parents know what to do better than the kids. And if needed, block the site and let them not have access to it. I would say these are a few petty things that we can really work on. And going to the operational front, I would say, we better have a very strong antivirus and careful while passing out information, personal information on these websites, and instruct the children not to click on suspicious emails, really, which are not really needed for them, which says that you won a lottery, so much of amount will be credited into your account. We have all these emails coming nowadays. Like, we can tell them to just stop, not to touch those emails at all, and better delete them as soon as they come to you. And when children go with shoppings or putting parents' card information and all that, again, as said earlier, let's check the authenticity of the website. And once really very small petty things, just before we go into the online classes, whichever platform we might be using, it's advisable to close all the other tabs just before logging into the online class. A small tip that every child can do saves a lot. And even once we finish the conferencing application, whatever we are using, it's advisable to end the session and close it. Which children tend to miss this most of the time, which leads to, I believe, bigger complications actually.
I got all your points, very, very valid points, and that gives me that yes, we need to train our students in cyber laws. Not only the students, even the parents should be aware, because many of them are also not aware at all. My humble submission to all the panelists that let's have a check on the time, because we have would love to hear each one of you. You all, I am amongst the mid of the elite, August gathering on this panel discussion. So I move from here. My next question is to Ms. Seema Handa. My another concern that emerges from the heavy reliance on the use of the internet in education is the possibility of students being exposed to inappropriate content. What precautions could we take to prevent students from being exposed to inappropriate content? Because if you recall, when we started on the Zoom class, there were a number of posts which got viral, how the adults are entering and giving inappropriate postures and all. So how we can take care of it? Ms. Seema.
Good evening, Dr. Pathak and esteemed panelists. Let me introduce myself. I'm Seema Handa, Managing Director and CEO of Eklavya Group of Institutions. and I'm very glad to be a part of this discussion here. It's actually a very, very important concern which has come upon us very, very suddenly. It is not that we have gradually eased into the digital world. And so the challenges also that have come up upon us have come up very suddenly. And a vast number of challenges have been thrown at the education community. So all are equally impacted, as Ms. Varanasi just pointed out in detail. There are so many challenges addressed to the students as far as their privacy, as far as the safety is concerned, but there are also challenges which cannot be ignored, which cannot be brushed under the carpet. The digital class or digital education is now here. Even if we have the vaccine, which is a little down the line, I think the digital education is here to stay. So we are never going back perhaps to the way education was. We are moving forward to a hybrid model or a mixed model or a mix of physical and digital education. So just to carry forward Ms. Varanasi's discussion about how to address privacy and safety concerns and the possibility of inappropriate content being exposed to children of all age groups. It could be small children, minor children, it could be teenagers, it could be young adults. Of course, certain parameters or certain controls are already available in all softwares and social media across all browsers, platforms, where from the settings, one can put things like parental control. These are very basic, obvious tools available to the parents and also to the older children themselves. So that is one option which, as Ms. Varanasi also pointed out, that education is required. We need to create education and awareness amongst the students and the parents as to the availability of such tools so that they can be used appropriately. Now, actually, the issue needs to be looked at in a much wider and long-term perspective. So along with using these tools which are available, we have to ultimately work upon the education and awareness of all concerned. It's the parents, the students themselves, and the teachers as well. So similarly to the way we have value education, we have skill education. I think now we need to add something called digital education, which will create an awareness of what are the different mediums available, how are they to be used responsibly, because we cannot eliminate their usage, nor can we restrict their usage. So what we have to really teach the children and the parents is responsible usage of the same. And responsible usage will come with awareness, with knowledge, with understanding. So I would be very happy to see if one part of NEP could also focus on digital awareness, which is going to now become a very, very serious need of the education industry, because we are creating citizens who are presently very sensitive and prone to inappropriate content.
I agree completely, Ms. Seema, with you. And I do understand that we all are living now in digital age. So stone age, and then steam age, and then electric age, and now we are in digital age. So very well noted your points. My next question, from here I take to Ms. Rashmi Singh. discipline and accountability, for which even Ms. Seema said that we have to make them responsible. That means we are asking that they should be accountable enough to take all these. We have to give them accountability. There should be. So discipline and accountability is key to effective teaching and learning and to proper functioning of any educational institution. Remote learning, however, makes it easier for students to evade their responsibilities and obligations and then indulge in activities that are actually compromises the integrity of the entire education system process. So what measures could we adopt in our SOPs to ensure this does not happen?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Chandrakanta Pathakji, for letting me speak on this particular topic. And of course, before I begin, I would like to again thank the APAC Global Education and Skill Conclave to have me included in this panel of discussion. Dr. Chandrakanta, as you asked me this question, when you were, reading out the question, I was just trying to remember as a student, when I was as a student, and what all caused me, what all factors came to my mind, which always distracted me from education and from the regular teaching learning in the classroom, and what deviated me to not pay attention to the teachers who were, trying effort into the conceptual teaching. Well, the first thing, I am not being noticed by my teacher. The teacher doesn't see me, and when the teacher doesn't see me, I feel I am not very important. It is not very important for me to listen to the teacher. Secondly, I feel when I am not able to relate to the context what teacher is trying to convey, I am not understanding it, and there is no effort either from me or from the teacher to bridge this gap. So I am in my own world, distracted, and of course, with no accountability towards what's going on in the classroom. And third thing, I feel that I was never a part of, as a student, when I'm remembering my days as a student, I was never a part of any kind of, there's something called as essential agreement that happens in the classroom when we have the sessions beginning between the pupil and the teacher. These are certain essential agreements that remain bounded within the two, the teacher and the student bodies, and it is imprinted on the wall that this is what has been agreed upon, and all students will abide by it. So, these are the most important factors. In fact, these are my answers towards your question. First thing, I feel when we begin with our classes, there should be an important essential agreements done between the teacher and the pupil. The second thing, I feel when a teacher starts her lessons, there should be a strong bonding between the teacher and the students. The bonding makes all the discipline come naturally. We are already living so much of disciplined life, Ms. Chandrakanta. We have a regular time interval of day and night, regular time interval in which we have our meals. So everything is so naturally disciplined. So discipline is something which should come naturally in the class, I feel, if the instructions are planned in such a way that grabs the students' attention, that makes them feel wanted in the classroom, and that makes them feel, that they are a part of everything that happens in the class. Moreover, I feel they should be noticed, they should be observed, they should be called upon, and they should be talked to in the classroom setup. Now, coming to this specific modified learning into an online platform like Zoom or any other, I feel here again, if the child is disconnected in a classroom, that is one of the most important reasons why a child wants to be deviated out of the class, why the child feels not accountable for anything if the child is not connected to the class. I'm not talking about technical connection. I'm talking about the natural connection of, you know, my interest as a student to what my teacher is going to communicate today. What is that surprise she is going to bring into the classroom? So I strongly feel that in an online platform, as we all are practicing, there should be a gradual progress of syllabus. It is not a classroom which we are, you know, happening to see students face to face. So a gradual progress of the content planned. Second point, there should be a lot of repetition that needs to happen with the teacher, not just, you know, repeating the same things in the we should try to repeat whatever is in it. Third thing, there should be very rare the
I
assessments and quick
I
feedback
believe Ms. Rashmi,
will let the teachers know what is the pace. Yes,
I
ma'am.
believe Ms. Rashmi, there is some connectivity issue from your end. I'll come back to you with the next question. So may I move to Ms. Sapnu George?
Hello, Dr. Chandrakanta.
Hi. Dear, taking this, that yes, what Ms. Rashmi emphasized is that human bond, connectivity between the child and the teacher is all right. Now, I'm putting a totally different question to you, because not only the teachers, even non-teaching staff are crucial to maintaining and running the institution.
Absolutely.
However, they are not necessarily equipped to deal with the novel safety and security issues that emerge from remote learning. How could we help them become more aware of the nature of these issues and make them digitally competent enough to address these issues?
Thank you, Dr. Chandrakanta and Apak for having me and for the question. So yeah, just a little bit, I'm working with the Trivandrum International School, and I feel like, you know, teaching and non-teaching staff to kind of get on board with this new era that we're living in. There's just one thing that my mind first goes to, and that is training. You know, like how we have orientation sessions to groom people to use a new service or travel to a new country or learn a new language. We train, right? And we mentor them, and to get into a whole, similarly, to get into the world of digital learning, there is so much of training, you know, and also kind of mental shift of mindset that is required. And kids end up on this bandwagon way before adults, you know, very comfortably. So it is essential that we don't leave our staff behind, you know, without losing a beat, and have them fully equipped to handle the virtual platforms. And you know, this doesn't only include the certified digital teaching resources that we have, but the classroom platform as well, Google, Microsoft, Zoom, whatever it may be, using the features effectively. You know, this is not just for classrooms, but for any meetings with adults also. It's obviously easier and less challenging with adults, but using the features that they have effectively, knowing to adjust the settings based on the progress of the class or the meeting, based on student temperament and class participation, is instrumental in getting the most out of the online learning experience. So at school, what we had done was we did an orientation session and kind of shared links with our teachers. And with our teachers, we did a session, a live session, but with our parents, we shared links in the form of a tutorial, so that even they know what to expect, you know, from the platform. And because we use the Google Suite for our email domain as well, we continue to use their classroom feature, and felt that it was very secure and optimal to kind of have everything under one platform. And what I meant by tweaking the features is, for example, if you switch on and off your video and audio, based on, it could be based because of connectivity or because it's a test. Then recording features, then your background settings. Maybe it's a club, or it's a fun class, and children want to tweak with their background settings, or the chat box code of conduct. All of these are part of the essential agreements set by the teacher right in the beginning. And not because children will be indisciplined or any of that, but because virtual engagement is very, very difficult, so challenging, so much more than in the physical classroom. So leveraging all these features and being conscious of the security features available is very crucial. And it's very difficult. It's difficult to gain the trust of not just children, of anyone, virtually. But by the time you kind of set the mood, you get into the groove, you establish a positive dynamic and gain trust, it takes some time. So it's not just the digital know-how, like you very rightly said, it's also about the bond. It takes so much of patience and empathy on the part of the teacher or the moderator or the person conducting the meeting, on top of everything else that they have going on at home. So it is possible to leverage these features to kind of maximize the experience. And for non-teaching staff also similarly, to kind of make the most out of the meeting and make it more productive. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Sapno. I move. I hope Dr. Alam will not say that all ladies first and I'm still waiting for my turn. With due respect to you, sir, I come back to that first question where we talked, Ms. Varanasi talked about cyberbullying and all that. So my next question to you will be, remote learning removes students from the direct supervision by teachers and other authorities. This makes cyberbullying and other forms of harassment a real possibility. How to keep a check on students' activities and take preemptive measures to quell such behaviors? Dr. Alam, please.
Thank you, ma'am, for inviting me to take part in your esteemed discussion about the difficulties and the security faced by the children. And especially I do concentrate on my discussion with regard to the cyberbullying. It is a very, very important aspect in the life of a children. The first and foremost, the paradigm shift has taken place due to the COVID-19. The shift was from classroom to the houses, to the homes, to the bedrooms rather. And the child has absolutely no sort of a direct supervision, and the child is bound to face certain difficulties. At this teen age, especially as the child is growing, and these impressions make a lot more on the child's psychology. As we are discussing, the meaning of cyberbullying is that a child is emotionally and aggressively in an unwanted way teased by his peers or by the other people, elders or so on and so forth. So it takes place online and digital devices, and much more so it includes hateful or mean texts, social media posts intended to spread rumors and embarrassing or fake images about a student. Now it's important that gives an impact, a long-term impact on child's mental health, confidence and relationship. It can even affect their ability to concentrate on academics. And when a child comes to the school, we cannot be surprised if a child is hanging over and without even concentrating on the studies. We all know that this study is very important and nothing can replace the classroom teaching. And in these circumstances, when the child is bullied by this online sort of communication, and we have to step into the situation. First and foremost, gain confidence. Bring confidence to the child. And it is a teacher who plays an important role over here. The innocent teasing happens through the text, so on and so forth. So we have to be a patient listener and a person in understanding of the child's problem. And the school stepping is always going to be a combination of tools, rules, and schools. The emphasis needs to be on creating a culture of responsibility online. Kids need not to think about concentrate and they create the post. First and foremost, it is not the, so to say, step to take away the online facility for the kids, but it much involves about the modulating, the concentration on which a parent or the teacher gives. If schools are using technology to deliver education and instruction, they have to responsibly educate the students the way they have to use it correctly. And that is important. But how do we use it? How do we help them to use it correctly? The first step could be to show that cyberbullying is not a right passage for them, educating them. And if we don't change the culture, then we are helping young people to be victimized. And secondly, have a school counselor. A counselor can follow up the kids, the students over there in the school premises, or even online and offline. And the counselor could know the student behavior, how it is dropping and how it is going to be ruined. And give kids a way to avoid victimization. They did not be always victimized. Remind them not to put anything sensitive into electronic format, so on and so forth, and how harmful it could be for those people. And let kids know that you care and you help them whenever they are in trouble. If they are victimized, let them come to us and we are ready. Even if they are not coming to us, and we take initiative and we go and consult with them. Keep our fingers and emotional state of students at our fingertips. And how we can help, especially the class in charge, class teacher can always take initiative to enter into their private arena and try to help them. And finding the right response to do this is, although school should take sort of a cyberbullying as an important event, we listen to the students and let the target be part of the solution. And we also have to introduce parents. We have to invite the parents also to the school or a developed mode to contact them and to inform them how their kids are functioning at home. And these are some of the suggestions that I can bring forward for our discussion.
Dear panelists, I wish to just say very politely that we have taken little longer time for the first set of discussion. When we come to the second one, we have to maintain our time. And here I will see that we are talking to discipline the students, how we will discipline ourselves. So let us not take more than 2 or 2.5 minutes max. If we take 2 minutes, probably I'll get the time to take your final concluding remark. Otherwise, I have to quit because by 5:15 we have to hand over the platform to the ABET. So I'm coming with my next question to Ms. Ramani Varanasi. Madam, digital devices and reliable internet connection are necessary for quality remote learning. However, not all students have equal access to them because of our demography and all other factors. So what methods or strategies could be used to make quality education accessible to disadvantaged.
Right. Am I audible, Ms. Pathak?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Right, please, yeah. Right. I think something that really excites a student to go to the school at the start of the academic year is the smell of new books, wearing new uniform, trying to meet the friends after break of 2 months. Now all this has been replaced completely by tabs, computers, smartphones, and the so-called rest places home has turned into a classroom. But whatsoever, learning has to go on because education starts in the womb and ends in the tomb. Once we stop learning, we become old, and we can be young and energetic as long as we are learning is what everyone believes in. And especially for the younger generation, there is no way they can be out of the education. And now I would say that COVID has, made us find various ways as to how we can keep the education going on. I'm sure we are not out here finding no way to keep the education on. But when we are really talking about countries like India, where the government has had to promote many acts, rules, regulations like the Right to Education Act, midday meal, and all these to make the children go to the schools. And to those students, we are really talking about having a smartphone, having a gadget, and like taking the class online might be a little tougher job for India, even though we say the internet connectivity and other things to be high, but like that's confined only to a segment of people. So now that you have given a time limit, let me just try to make it a little faster. In India, we have, it says that like around only 24% people have smartphones, and around 11-15% have laptops. So what are we doing with the remaining children who cannot be deprived of education as per any laws, any rules? So quickly going over what we are doing right now. I mean, like most of the schools, big schools or small schools, they go with different applications like Zoom, WebEx or Google Meet or whatever. But that needs high internet connectivity, which would not be possible for the deprived students. And the second option we can think of is an online radio. Right, and we do have All India Radio, which has been already into the education from many years. It's not new that we are doing during this COVID. We have many programs like Vidyabhyasa Rangam and many channels which really talk about on the radio about imparting education. I think those that would be a good advantage for these children. And the television channels we have, I mean, like television would be a better mode because, we can have the video, audio, and, multi-dimensional teaching going on there. I mean, like we have programs again like Pathashala, which is being already relayed, and Mera Doordarshan, Mera Vidyalay. And especially during this COVID, I would say there was one program launched by Indian government, Swayam Prabha, which has declared around 12 channels to teach from grade 1 to 12. 12 different channels have been launched. And even the Diksha app, which has been launched by the Ministry of Human Resource Development. All these, I believe, are an apt source for the children who want to have their learning going on at this juncture and at this point of time. Because, I mean, like many countries already, like Africa, I mean, like who have a low level of income level, they are 70% of their education is going on radios and TVs. But like in this scenario, I think we are left with no option to switch over to them for those whom you have stated as disadvantaged students, rather than giving up education, because this is not the point. We can stop our travel once we reach the point.
Thank you, Ms. Ramani, for your great input. The points are well taken. I move quickly to Ms. Seema Handa. So my next question to you is, it is well established fact that group discussions and teamwork are crucial component of effective learning. However, remote learning does not allow such activities in person. So in what ways educational institutes might redesign their remote learning sessions so as to make up for the lack of teamwork? Ms. Seema. Please unmute yourself. Ms. Seema, please unmute yourself.
Yes, Dr. Pathak, I think you have touched upon the very crux of education. You know, teamwork is the very basis of humanity. We are social beings. We work with the human touch. You know, we are not living in an isolated vacuum. And the whole purpose of a school or an institution is the socialization of children and how they can interact, learn to interact, and get a social bonding with each other. Now, all that requires teamwork. Teamwork is something which builds trust. It teaches you communication. It brings in cooperation. It makes you connect. It helps you to collaborate. And I think Rashmi Singh had mentioned that engagement, you know, teamwork and engagement is very important for the students learning to happen. Now, it is such an important component that whether physical or digital, we just cannot afford to ignore this aspect of education. So presently, if we are doing our education online, we have to bring teamwork online as well. The same structure that we are using in the physical world has to be brought online, although it will require careful deliberation. It will require understanding of the digital world. And I think here we are very fortunate that the government agencies, the CBSE, as well as private agencies, ICRTC, they have done a wonderful job of making training available to the teachers of not only academics but also soft skills which they need for conducting such team building sessions. And I think if we were to utilize those trainings effectively with a little bit of planning and thought going into it, then we can certainly ensure that the teamwork activities continue to happen. And the structure can be very similar, as Rashmi had mentioned, you know, to help engage, you can have an icebreaker. It may require some modification for the digital platform, but it can still happen. Similarly, the team building activity can happen. Some creativity is required by the moderator to make the activity suitable for the digital model. But once a thought has gone into it, it can certainly be done digitally. What really is required is to take things a little slower, a little more planned and structured, and with lot of clarity and repetition may be required to make sure that everybody understands. One of the aspects, key aspects of a physical team building activity is the physical presence and your visual connect with other members. So another opportunity in a digital platform is to make sure that everybody's cameras are turned on, so that you can actually see the other person and connect with the other person. So there can be various opportunities to make sure that we effectively hold a teamwork activity, because it's an aspect which is very important to build the creativity and the communication skills and the logical and critical thinking of the children.
Correct.
Dr. Pathak.
And even these platforms like Google Meet and Zoom are giving us the opportunity to have the waiting room areas. You can create waiting room 1, 2, 3, 4, divide your classes into the different groups, let the children have discussion, project, and then they come together and present. So if we have a little bit better planning, this can be achieved definitely. Dear friends, I have only 5 minutes in my hand and I have 3 panelists. So please be little brief when you are making your point. I move to Ms. Rashmi Singh now. Uh, and to you, my question is, being able to interact with the students in person is important for a teacher to understand and address their learning needs. Remote learning, by its very nature, significantly restricts in-person interaction. What tools, strategies, and methods could teachers incorporate in their online teaching practice to better understand students' learning needs?
Okay, good evening, ma'am, once again, and thank you very much. I would like to speak in brief about the question asked to me. Just now, I'm being focused and people are watching me very clearly. But before I was not speaking, even then I was focused. I felt like a student. I have done some mischief that people are putting the cameras focused on me. So in a nutshell, I would like to speak, madam, that it is very, very important that when, as a teacher, I'm entering to a class, as Ms. Seema there should be an appropriate planning. A statement that I would say, I as a teacher, I should be able to use, I should be able to apply all the tools available on which is used to deliver. I'll be much more smarter technologically so that I am do not underestimate me as a teacher and of repetition, lot of repetition, and of course with repetition there should be a frequent assessment and timely feedback where children understand that okay, this is the area of my growth and this is where I need to work for myself. And who doesn't like challenges? If today I have understood, I would like to know more about it. So here we need to have the appropriate level of challenge. That's my challenge, because slowly when the children feel that they are wanted and they are progressing, they want to get back to more towards it. So I would conclude with this because I believe my other panelists would also want to speak on certain things.
Very
Thank
quickly,
you very much, Chandra ma'am. And
thank you, dear Rashmi. Thank you so much. I quickly move to my next panelist, Ms. Sapno. And to you, my question is a very valid thing, and all of us are talking about NEP 2020, and it proposes certain, creation of vast public digital infrastructure that would facilitate online education across institutions in India. Current pandemic has made the need for a robust public digital infrastructure all the more clear for us. Given our experience of the pandemic and the challenges we currently face in education, how should we approach developing a digital infrastructure?
Thank you. Yeah, I do feel like the NEP came out at a very good time because the pandemic has thrown us into, has forced us to accelerate and kind of adapt, and learn on the go. So NEP is kind of forcing us to embrace change as well, just like the pandemic has, and a very long overdue awakening to the need for progressive education in the country. We have been following IB and Cambridge and all of that, but it's for many years now, but it's good to kind of see that endorsed again by the NEP, that philosophy, the essence of it. And there's so much potential with Indian students and putting them at par with students in the global arena. How this actually helps with the government taking in more of an initiative for a public digital infrastructure, I feel it's directly connected to what the NEP also says. Firstly, there is not going to be any disruption in learning anymore, that we know. And all kinds of, but the support that the government can give is in terms of course, infrastructure and training, which has already been brought up by the panelists before. And the other thing, very important thing, the government has to involve stakeholders from the education sector before they even think about establishing something like this. Otherwise, if the end user is not in the picture, then the objectives are not clear to all, the concern areas are not clear to all, nobody is going to be in the same page, and the exercise will be ineffective. So that's the only thing, that there has to be stakeholders from our sector for it to kind of actually work pan India and make it accessible to all students across different tiers of city. And only then will not just online learning, but the NEP also be put into proper.
Very true. Very true. So finally, we are going to touch the goal, digital India. All right. Though we have already crossed 2 minutes of our time, but I can't be that rude. I have to give the last question to my last panelist with again a request, sir, not more than a minute or two. Dr. Alam, on campus, physical libraries play a vital role in facilitating the process of education by making expensive quality educational material accessible to students. Remote learning, however, precludes access to libraries. In such a scenario, how do we mitigate the negative impact of lack of access to libraries on overall learning outcomes and development of students?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, once again. It is true, in these circumstances, we have stocked our libraries very well. All the big institutions and small institutions, being the library a compulsory component, we have stocked our books, very true. But in this changed scenario, circumstances, now it is once again, how do we access to these libraries? And what happened to all our stocks? The important thing is, since the paradigm has shifted from classroom teaching to online teaching, it's important that we make our libraries a digital world, digital libraries. And in these circumstances, of course, staff have increased their knowledge, their techniques in order to export that knowledge to the students. And secondly, they also have learned the techniques of improving their own knowledge and passing on to the students. And thirdly, the librarians or the persons who are in charge of this digital world, they also have learned the technique of passing on the knowledge to the world, to the students. So it is necessary. Of course, there are so many limitations in India to make these libraries as a digital libraries. You need the sources, resources, finances, so on and so forth. But however, the shift is towards digital learning, and you can now download anything and from all over, all the resources, all the websites, and cut and paste and much more so to pass on even to the other people. So I always am interested in passing on the knowledge through the digital world to the young world.
Point well taken, Dr. Alam, that digital libraries are the sources for us. Now, I would like to make my concluding remark, but before that, I wish to thank APEC, Ms. Rashmi, Dr. Alam, Ms. Seema, Ms. Sapno, and Ms. Ramani for taking part and making this panel discussion lively and vibrant. Dear friends, COVID-19 pandemic has caused massive disruption in the country's education system. You all know since March, we all are within our four walls. In fact, let me say, that the students and the parents have already entered into our private life, that is our home. They know what we do. It is likely that the negative impact of loss of learning brought about the pandemic will continue to be felt in the near future as well. As we assess the losses in learning incurred because of the pandemic and its ramifications on the socio-economics in the country, we must also keep in mind the opportunity it has availed to examine and improve the infrastructure at our educational institutions. Pandemic has created a space in our collective conscience to carefully consider the changes we might want to bring into the education system. This is a task that would have taken years to accomplish, had it not been for the nationwide crisis brought about by the pandemic. So it's also has brought an opportunity for all of us. However, such an overhauling of the education infrastructure will require synergistic partnership between all stakeholders. The role of the leaders at educational institutions is crucial, as they are responsible for determining where and how the important resources are to be employed and to do whatever at their end. With that, I thank each one of you once again, and it was a wonderful learning session. I hand over the platform back to APAC team. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Dr. Chandrakanta Pathak, Principal and CEO, HVB Global Academy, for wonderfully playing the role of moderator for a very important session. When we talk about education, we talk about new normal situation. We have to think about creating new standard operating procedures, the safety and security of opening up school and securing school premises. That's a very important part of this entire education, and I'm sure deliberations made in session have been insightful, learning from all of us who have watched today. I also thank Dr. Alam Srivareddy, Chairperson in International School, Rashmi Singh, CEO Podar, Royal International School, Seema Handa, Managing Director and CEO Level School, Sapnu George, Executive Director, Trivandrum International School, and Ramani Varanasi, Principal, Akshara International School, for joining us for the session. And as Dr. Chandrakanta was saying, that to take the crux of the discussion of this session, we can say that this pandemic has led us to learn a lot of new things. It has also made us rethink our approach to the education sector, apart from other sectors as well. And a lot of it was needed to be done for the infrastructure upliftment. This pandemic has ensured that with things which were taking years to come by, this pandemic has ensured that things happen in a couple of weeks. And I think digital intervention is important. Securing that data is important, but I believe personally, I don't know about others, there always has to be a human touch when you're imparting education. There has to be a physical interaction with student and teacher. Digital intervention can be there as a leveraging point, but I think it should be a coexistence of both brick and mortar and online education. That is the future for education world over in the new world order. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us for